So Batman Hush is the most recent animated movie in the DC animated movie universe, and this was a highly anticipated film. It's based on one of the most popular Batman comics of all time, the comic being of the same name, of course, Batman Hush. So it's time to review it. This review is a little late because I've been pretty sick at the beginning of this week. I'm feeling better now, and I'm still going to do a non-spoiler review since it's still a couple weeks before this thing comes out on Blu-ray and drops on DC Universe. So I'm sure that there's still plenty of people that haven't seen the movie. Just the first thing I want to get out of the way, I have not read the Batman Hush comic. I'm not much of a reader. I haven't gotten around to read any comics. I will read Batman Hush one day, but I know a lot about the comic, and I know this movie does some spins on the comic, is not a super faithful adaptation. The movie borrows ideas from the comic, but it's not a direct adaptation, so if you're expecting a fully faithful adaptation and you want nothing else, you will probably not enjoy this movie, just a heads up. But I honestly enjoyed this movie more than I thought I was going to. Part of that may be me not having read the comic before. I know the major plot elements that they changed in the movie, but I don't know some subtle changes they may have made, if they made any from the comic to the movie. And I kinda expected this movie to be a bit different from the comic just because it's based in this DC animated movie universe. It's not a standalone movie, which was disappointing for me. I was hoping a movie based on such a big comic story arc would be a standalone movie and wouldn't be set in their animated universe, but they decided to set it in the animated universe, and I think it works within that universe, what they did. But another negative thing I have towards the film is the art style. Because of them setting it within their continuity, they had to go along with that animation style. And one of the best things about Batman Hush, especially with me not having read the story, the art is absolutely beautiful. I've seen the art from the book, and it is some of the best art I've ever seen in a comic. So it would have been so amazing to see that art translated to animation on screen. It would have been so beautiful. It probably would have been pretty hard to translate, but I think it would have been possible if they decided to go that route and make Batman Hush a standalone movie. Now getting into some positives about the film. First off, the Batman-Catwoman dynamic. This is probably the most I've ever liked their dynamic in anything other than Batman Returns. But naturally, I'm not a Bruce-Selina guy. I don't really ship them. I like to see Bruce with Talia more than I do Selina. I don't know why, I've just never been a Batman-Catwoman guy. I've just never been the biggest fan of Selina, but I really liked her in this movie, and the movie actually got me invested with Bruce's and Selina's relationship, which is a good thing, because their relationship is probably at least half of this movie. It's what this movie most focuses on. I also really like Dick in this movie. I just think he has some of the best one-liners, some of the best comedic scenes in this movie. There is some dialogue that doesn't work in this movie. Like, some of the dialogue is just used as unneeded exposition. It's like they were just using some dialogue to fill runtime when they could have been focusing on a different story element, or maybe could have introduced an entirely new story element. But every time Nightwing was on screen, I was entertained. I also think the movie incorporated Superman pretty well. He's not in it for an extremely long period of time. Of course, there are several things that this movie needs to hit, several plot points that the movie needs to showcase. The incorporation of a large portion of Batman's Rose Gallery was done pretty well, I think. Almost every villain they utilized was utilized pretty well, even if we didn't see too much of them. I don't think the use of one character affected the story in a negative way. Now, some people would probably argue me on that because some characters were utilized differently in the movie than they were in the comic, but the story that the movie was telling, not the story that the comic told, I don't think the incorporation of any one character affected the movie story in a negative way. The biggest negative toward the film, just on a storytelling level, is that it's trying to do too much. It has 80 minutes to tell the story, to adapt this comic, and it's trying to do everything that the comic did whilst putting their own spin on it. I think they actually balance it pretty well throughout the movie, but at times you can just tell it's too much. They're jumping from story to story. It's incorporating several Batman villains in an 80-minute time frame, and sometimes it just feels like it's not cohesive. Like, these things that are happening in the movie don't really connect. They're just kind of happening randomly. It's just Batman stopping a bunch of crimes. Like, yeah, of course they're all happening because of Hush, but the movie doesn't really explain why they happen. They just kind of show Hush talking to this villain or saying it's time, and then something happens. It doesn't really explain the connection Hush has to each villain and how everything happened. I think it explains most of this stuff, and some of the stuff that it doesn't explain isn't too important, so that doesn't hurt the film too much. It's just, it could have been more cohesive if they wanted it to be, I feel like. But overall, I think Batman Hush is a good film, and I think it's on a higher quality than a lot of these other DC animated movies are that are in this universe. Some people aren't going to like the changes the movie made to the comic, but I was fine with it. It didn't bother me. I think the story they told was pretty good. I think they are just trying to do too much throughout, and that affects the storytelling, which affects the movie, so the movie isn't the greatest, but I think it's pretty good. It's better than a lot of these movies in the DC animated movie universe. So I'm going to give it a B. Pretty good film. I'd rewatch it. We've had better comic to film adaptations though, and we've just had better DC animated movies. So if you've seen Batman Hush, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys sometime.